Today we're going to discuss the 4 characters that work at bike shops. I previously did one of these on the characters that shop at bike shops. Now we're going to talk about who's behind the counter. Number 1, this is the obvious low-hanging fruit. That's going to be the bike snob. Why do I call it the low-hanging fruit? It's because it's in large part why my business model works. I originally believed that selling used bikes was going to be my edge getting into this industry. And while that is kind of a unique angle at which I'm able to operate my business, people not necessarily looking for shiny new, the real edge has been just not being a dick to people. It turns out when your customer comes in and you treat them like a human and you meet them where they're at, you get a lot of good results on both sides. And judging by the comments that I often get on this channel and also just experiences that I have seen in the industry as a whole, the bike snob is still alive and well in a shop near you. This is the person who's looking down at you even if they're 3 inches shorter. They're usually...
Damn.
I'm just off the cuff here.
Hit him where it hurts. We love you, short kings.
They're typically riding steel only, and any frame material other than that is below them. They're judging you for the socks you wear before you even open your mouth. And don't even dare to drag in any swamp monsters from Walmart or Target, or they will kick you straight out the door. They're dismissive, they have no salesmanship. They definitely should never open a shop of their own, or they will face a very rude awakening that there is a side to this way beyond just the mechanics. The bike snob, in effect, is the tribalistic aspect of the bike industry that has alienated a lot of people, making them feel butthurt and at worst, not even taking up cycling in the first place. Person number 2 that you'll find behind the counter at a bike shop is the clueless newbie. And I say that with love because we all have to start somewhere, and on day 1, nobody knows anything. But it can be frustrating as a customer when you walk in and because it's a busy shop and there's a lot of things going on, you end up in that unfortunate conversation where you're talking to the first line of defense before the mechanic and then maybe the owner of the shop. It's the person that got hired yesterday and is still learning the difference between a Prestatube and a Schrader tube. This is the person where every conversation feels like it's just got more friction than it needs to have because you're ending up having to be deferred to other people and waiting in line. It's not necessarily a jab at the person, but the bike industry in general that tends to take a lot of people and shove them in a spot where they may be ill-prepared for all the myriad of questions is gonna come their way. The fact of the matter is, the bike industry will permanently be fixated into this weird spot where it's simultaneously a recreational fun activity for families, but also an intensely involved trade skill. How do you get the person in that can bring things down to a distilled level, but also understand all of the mechanical explanations happening behind the scenes? By the way, just a really quick note, if you're interested in drilling down further and figuring out how to either start or optimize your current bike business, we do have a tremendous amount of value behind our memberships. We're really proud of what we've packed in to something that we can essentially make available at a really accessible price point. It's essentially all of my hard-earned lessons over these past 10 years in business. You can check out the links below. And this brings us to person number 3 that you'll find behind the counter of a bike shop, which is the burned out veteran. This person has the skills to actually distill all of the technical jargon to a level that you can understand, and yet they choose not to because they're just tired of talking to you. This is the guy that can fix the problem before you're done explaining it, but can never do so with a smile on his face. They smell faintly of chain lube and regret, and they kind of wish on some level that they took up plumbing. As far as they're concerned, you break it, they fix it, and then you break it again. The veteran's been at the shop for 20+ years. Usually he's behind a wall of more of the newbies that don't know quite as much, but are a little bit friendlier because they haven't been jaded by 3,000 conversations about the same thing. And finally, person number 4 that you'll find behind the counter of a bike shop, especially the big mega mover shops, it's gonna be the sales hustler. This person talks fast. He's watched Wolf of Wall Street 19 times because it's his favorite movie, and he lives for commission weekends. And at the same time, doesn't know how to fix a flat tire. This person will not hesitate to upsell you a headset spacer, whether you need it or not. And even when your bike that you brought in for a basic tune-up that's 5 years old, they will find any excuse they can to sell you next year's model. Now, I talk about all this jokingly, and you can take it with a grain of salt as you should, but there is something in common between these 4 different characters, and it's that they all are on some level very frustrating to deal with as a consumer, and they do represent a lot of the common problems that people find nowadays when they walk into a bike shop. You can even see on my channel and other channels, whenever somebody talks about doom and gloom in the industry, there's always the person jumping in and be like, they deserve it. They've been greedy. I've been dismissed in a bike shop, so F you. I bring this up not only jokingly, but to comically illustrate the problems that can be fixed in bike shops. The truth is, there's a lot of small shops closing right now, and there's a lot of pressures causing that, but at the end of the day, a refocusing on the customer experience can go a long way when you've let it fall to such deep shit. There's so many people that don't walk into bike shops, not because you don't have the product or service that they're looking for, but because your salesmanship's gone completely out the window and you just dismiss them and make them feel like they'd rather not talk to you either. So if you feel a little bit called out because maybe you fit into one of those 4 categories, maybe just check yourself a little bit. We're all human. We all get a little bit burned by having the same conversation too many times in a row. But just remember who you're talking to on the other side of that equation and where they're at. They're not living and breathing bike shop life. They're not burned out by the same things. They have different things on their mind and different questions. And on the flip side of the coin, if you're visiting a bike shop, remember that the asshole that's talking to you or the ignoramus that doesn't know how to answer your questions in a way that you think is fitting, just extend them the same patience that you would expect them to extend to you. I know we live in a world where the consumer is always right, but the reality is when you walk into a bike shop, you've still got one human talking to another, and there's all these opportunities for snafus on both sides. Just be nice to each other. I don't care if you're walking into the shop or you work there. It'll just make things smoother for everyone.